from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Give us a call. Our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. It is D-Day, the 79th anniversary of D-Day, when American soldiers famously stormed the beaches of Normandy, France in World War II. And I salute the fallen and everyone who has served, both then and now, because it's a tremendous sacrifice. 79 years ago today, the Allies landed on Omaha Beach, and they were prepared to face sudden death in order to defend liberty. Despite a heavy death toll, the Allies came out victorious that day. Thank God. As Joshua Phillip from the Epic Times wrote, quote, "What won the battle against all odds was the ability of common men to do great things, to overcome a challenge that seemed impossible, and through courage and inner will to come out better in the end than any number cruncher thought possible. That spirit was seen on D-Day," end quote. When they faced the overwhelming force of Germans on the high ground, the Americans took matters into their own hands. Philippe wrote, "At the beach where Pyle landed, against all odds and all normal protocol, Navy ships rolled near the shore and went head-to-head with German guns. May the spirit of the Allies continue to live in America, the spirit of a republic where independent people take it on themselves to stand against tyranny." That was a piece written by Rachel Kukaji on my website, richvaldez.com, a number of years ago when she used to contribute to the site. And I wanted to read it because I thought it was so well said. And it's a part of history that we should never forget, one that so many seem to gloss over as if it never happened, but it did. And it's important that we acknowledge it. Back in 1984, Ronald Reagan gave a D-Day speech, and I've got a clip of it, and I'm going to play it in true Lavine fashion, right? I learned all this stuff from one of my mentors, the great one, Mark Lavine, who would always give full context, and he still does, full context to these clips of some of the greatest speeches ever. And some of my favorites are from President Ronald Reagan. I want you to listen to this.
"We stand on a lonely, windswept point on the northern shore of France. The air is soft, but 40 years ago at this moment, the air was dense with smoke and the cries of men, and the air was filled with the crack of rifle fire and the roar of cannon. At dawn on the morning of the 6th of June, 1944, 225 Rangers jumped off the British landing craft and ran to the bottom of these cliffs. Their mission was one of the most difficult and daring of the invasion: to climb these sheer and desolate cliffs and take out the enemy guns. The Allies had been told that some of the mightiest of these guns were here, and they would be trained on the beaches to stop the Allied advance. The Rangers looked up and saw the enemy soldiers at the edge of the cliffs shooting down at them with machine guns and throwing grenades, and the American Rangers began to climb. They shot rope ladders over the face of these cliffs and began to pull themselves up. When one Ranger fell, another would take his place. When one rope was cut, a Ranger would grab another and begin his climb again. They climbed, shot back, and held their footing. Soon, one by one, the Rangers pulled themselves over the top, and in seizing the firm land at the top of these cliffs, they began to seize back the continent of Europe. 225 came here. After 2 days of fighting, only 90 could still bear arms. And behind me is a memorial that symbolizes the Ranger daggers that were thrust into the top of these cliffs. And before me are the men who put them there. These are the boys of Puente Hope. These are the men who took the cliffs. These are the champions who helped free a continent. And these are the heroes who helped end a war. Gentlemen, I look at you and I think of the words of Stephen Spender's poem. You are men who in your, quote, lives fought for life and left the vivid air signed with your honor.
That's the great communicator, Ronaldus Magnus, as he was known by El Rushbo. President Reagan, few as eloquent as he. And an excellent speech, June 6, 1984, at the 40th anniversary of D-Day, next year being the 80th anniversary of D-Day. So I just wanted to get into that a little bit. I also wanted to remind you that in the next hour, Brandon Straka from the Walkaway campaign, he's going to be joining us to discuss the LGBTQ culture wars. And it makes you think, you know, we probably wouldn't even have these culture wars today had it not been for the sacrifice of those men on the beaches of Normandy back on D-Day, right? Because ultimately there was so many things at risk. It was, I would say, a time similar to now, but back then they were using military force to try and force the will of the fascists, force the will of those that were enemies of liberty. And today we see it in different ways, different types of wars through a very cultural revolution, if you will, that we're seeing in our own country. So we're going to have a discussion on that. By the way, Target has lost $13 billion in market value, according to Fox News. And a little bit later on, we're going to have a conversation with Larry Lavine. He's the founder of the restaurant Chili's, and he's going to be discussing the rising cost of beef. Now, steak is obviously getting more expensive. And, of course, we all know that. I went out for a steak this weekend, and I thought, man, these are getting more expensive, very, very pricey. And one of my favorite memories in life, being that Father's Day is coming up, is eating steaks with my dad. I would go with my dad, and, I grew up very poor, and, as I'd gotten older and I'd experienced some success, I'd say, come on, let me take you out for a steak. And he would love it. He'd say, man, that's good. and we'd really enjoy a steak. It was one of my favorite things to do while he was still alive. And with Father's Day right around the corner, I think everybody, if your dad's still around, your granddad, whomever you want to honor on Father's Day, you've got to get dad what he really, really wants. And in my opinion, that's an Omaha steak. Yep. Omaha steaks, they're perfectly aged, always tender, and guaranteed delicious. The Father's Day experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to put a smile on the big guy's face. And I don't mean the big guy you might be thinking of. I'm meaning the big guy in your life. So this summer, make them happy with hand-selected packages. Head over to omahasteaks.com and use my promo code, which is GRILL, G-R-I-L-L. Use promo code GRILL at checkout and get $30 off your qualifying order. Now, you can choose from you've got a variety of things, right? You've got these mouth-watering packages. They include the fork tender bacon-wrapped filet mignons, a couple of other gourmet grillables like the air-chilled boneless chicken breasts. They've got the burgers, too, jumbo franks, and many more favorites. Don't forget to save room for dessert. Most of these gift packages come with 4 delicious caramel apple tartlets. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. So listen, go to Omaha Steaks and use code GRILL, G-R-I-L-L. Use it when you check out. You're going to get $30 off of the already unforgettable gift price, and that's guaranteed to make Dad's special day even more special. Remember, if there's one thing that you need to know, it's that dads want steak. So go to omahasteaks.com, promo code GRILL at checkout. Now, whether he's your dad, your father-in-law, a father figure, or the guy who was always ready to step up when you needed him the most, this Father's Day, show him the love that he deserves with the only gift that's as unforgettable as he is, the mouth-watering perfection of Omaha Steaks. Get those aged, perfectly tender steaks, hand-selected gift packages. Omaha Steaks makes it super easy to give Dad what he really wants. Order today and get those $30 off with promo code GRILL. and every purchase is backed by their unconditional money-back guarantee. Go to omahasteaks.com. I'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, woke is an existential threat to our society. I mean, it's an attack on truth. It's a form of cultural Marxism, and it really subordinates merit and achievement to things like identity politics. You can't have a vibrant, free society if every institution is dominated by woke ideology. And to say it's not a big deal, that just shows, you don't understand what a lot of these issues are right now.
That's Governor Ron DeSantis yesterday expounding upon woke ideology and how it's cultural Marxism that's affecting us. And I would go as far as to say that we're in the midst of a cultural revolution in the United States. And there's so many aspects to it, not the least of which is how it's, I'm going to say, hijacked a community of people to serve its own purpose. And I'm talking about the LGBTQ community. And with us to discuss the culture war and how the LGBTQ community is involved in it is Brandon Straka. You guys know Brandon Straka, and that's spelled Straka, silent A, Straka. He's the founder of the Walk Away campaign, and he's been on the show before. We've discussed January 6th and his personal experience with that and his experience in walking away from the Democrat Party. And he's got an event coming up in New York. We're going to get to that in the subsequent segment. But right now, I wanted to get his take on this headline that the Target market cap is currently down over $13 billion amid the Pride backlash. Brandon Straka, welcome.
Hey, Rich. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing good, my brother. So tell us what's going on. I know that you've got, you're always, you keep your ear to the ground. You're on the front lines of things. And being part of the LGBTQ community, I'm interested in hearing your perspective and how you see things changing. I mean, I'm just looking at headline after headline, how, part of your walkaway experience was seeing how the Democrats use the media to propagate their story. Now I'm looking at an article in Breitbart today that says Democrats are using drag queens to rally 2024 voters. So it seems they'll use anything to get what they want, whether it's by hook or by crook. Brandon Straka.
Yeah, it's true. And, so Walk Away, we just turned 5 years old last month.
Happy birthday.
And thank you. I appreciate it. And, in the first couple of years of Walk Away, that's when we started doing minority-focused town halls. And we did them for, the Black community, the Hispanic community, the LGBT community. And when we did the first few LGBT town halls, we were talking about things like, if you're a member of a minority community, you have the right to think for yourself. You have the right to not be part of the tribal mentality or the hive-mindedness. You can be an individual. You don't have to be a Democrat. That was our message. That was our message just a few short years ago. Now, here we are just a few short years later, and we're about to do our next LGBT town hall. And our message has transitioned from that to, we don't have a right to be preying on children and telling little kids that they should be changing their gender, or to be, overtly teaching sexual content and curriculum in schools, or to be absolutely dominating the media culture, the social media culture, the entertainment industry with this pride narrative and the equality narrative and the diversity narrative that's so disingenuous. And things have just spiraled so out of control so quickly. And so we're doing the same type of event that we did just a few years ago, but it really just goes to show just how much we've unraveled in even just a few short years.
Brandon Straka, excellent point. Because I remember, I think you guys did this event in the city, and back then we were arguing about capitalism versus socialism, right? And free
Yeah.
speech
Yeah.
and things that, seemed like the hot button issues of the day. And you're right. Now we're talking about what is going on. Boys are, being injected into girls' sports. I just came from a varsity awards dinner because my daughter is an athlete. And thankfully there wasn't anybody that was, stealing somebody's thunder by doing that. But it's just amazing to me that one would think that that's okay, and that, okay, let's say one person thinks it's okay. How do we get all these people to think that that's okay? Or even the stuff with Target, which is kind of how I started this conversation, where they're selling this children's clothes. And again, I think if you want a specialty item, and I'm not telling people what they can or can't sell, but this is just a matter of fact here. You go to a Target, and there's lots of things you can buy. I don't know how many people, and you tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to guess that a very small number of people are going to Target to buy a child-sized one-piece bathing suit designed with a female design, but designed with the tuck-friendly design for male genitalia. Would you agree?
I would agree. And I would also say a lot of people don't mention this that much, but they should be. So in this over-bloated Pride section, which, by the way, they put right at the front of the store. And, I'll make a secondary point here that this is the only, as far as I'm aware of, it's the only kind of seasonal thing that they put right at the front of the store, whether it's Christmas, whether it's Halloween, whether it's Valentine's Day. They always have sort of a seasonal section towards the back. But Pride is the only thing that they want to make sure that the moment you walk through the door, you see it. It's the first thing that you see, and you're assaulted by it. But the other point that I want to make is, and not a lot of people are talking about, in this Pride section, it's not just clothing. It's not just even baby clothing or baby onesies or whatever. They also have things like a gingerbread house for Pride, and like little toys and games. I mean, very much child-targeted things. Candy, Pride candy. Pride. So, I mean, these are things that are absolutely, undeniably being targeted towards kids. Now, listen, I want to make clear to your audience, I'm a gay man. I'm an openly gay man. I'm not trying to not be a gay man. So that, it's not like I'm, one of these people's like, oh, I used to be gay and now I'm reformed. No, not at all. But I do recognize there is an agenda happening here. And that's what concerns me so much, because my community, as well as many other types of minority communities, are being used by the left to usher in these different agendas that I think are very much designed to assault and target the fabric of American families and American culture and American values. And there's no reason that I can think of whatsoever that a Pride agenda needs to be delivered in the form of children's candy and children's toys and things like that. It makes no sense if there's not, this is predatory. Bottom line, it's predatory.
Yeah, let's leave it right there. We're coming back with Brandon Straka. Brandon Straka, founder of the Walk Away campaign. Make sure you check them out. Give them a follow as well. We're coming straight back. It's Rich Valdez, America at Night. 800-4-VALDEZ is the phone number if you want to chime in on this. We're coming back with Brandon Straka to continue this conversation on the LGBTQ culture wars. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
In congressional hearings, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs has repeatedly defended the department against accusations of being too woke, an issue he says is exaggerated.
We're about fighting and winning on battlefields, and we're all about readiness. We're all about readiness now and readiness in the future and modernization. I think the accusations of woke are grossly over-exaggerated.
Now, that's General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, saying that it's grossly exaggerated. But, of course, this is damage control because he was embarrassed, as well as Lloyd Austin was embarrassed, the Secretary of Defense, by Congressman Matt Gaetz in a hearing when he asked him about drag queen performances on military bases and why this was being, sponsored by the military. They didn't know what to. It was nobody knew anything, so obviously they were embarrassed by that. And in retrospect, they have now ordered no drag shows on military bases after this fallout, which was interesting, and that happened just about a week ago. Now you fast forward a little bit, and you see that the drag queens are not just being used to read story time in libraries and in certain pre-K and kindergarten classrooms in New York City that we found out to the tune of $400K over X amount of years, but they're also being used for all age drag shows all over the country, where they turn into political rallies. And Democrats joined with a female impersonator, a drag queen, at a pride party recently to rally far-left progressive voters for Arizona's upcoming elections. So I think the word that Brandon Straka used right before we went to the break, predatory, seems to be the right word to describe this type of behavior, because I've never seen anything like this. Welcome back, Brandon Straka.
Hey, thank you.
So what's your take on this? Because it seems to me that we saw this happen. If you were African-American, black people became the pawn of Democrats in 2020, where anything and everything became racial, right? Everything was racialized. And I don't think that's changed much, but I think we're seeing it kind of evolve into pride. And everything is about pride and pride parties and focusing on children. And it seems to be a snowball effect where it's getting worse and worse. And by worse, I mean, this isn't about liberty. This isn't about being proud of one's sexual identity. It isn't about any of those things. It seems to be like it's a recruitment effort for small children.
Well, and it is. I mean, and yes, and it is, and for several different reasons. So first of all, I mean, by getting in there, I think in indoctrinating little kids and targeting little kids with this message of, LGBTQI plus positivity, or pride agenda, things like that. Essentially what they're doing is sort of normalizing this culture early on for little kids, knowing that this will become ingrained in them, and eventually, they're going to kind of lock in that they will become liberal-minded kids who will become liberal-minded Democrats at some point. But the other part of this too, and I'm really glad that you brought up the thing about 2020 and the black community and Black Lives Matter and that whole thing that happened. What they're also trying to do more than anything is make us hate each other and continue on the division that exists in this country, because they desperately want. I'm sure you've heard when people say racism is something for which there's great demand but very little supply, and the same thing is kind of true of homophobia and things these days, or anti-gay sentiments. There just isn't much anymore in this country, in this part of the world. But what they need to do is inflame people's senses so much that they can actually create those feelings where they don't exist. I mean, by pushing the Black Lives Matter agenda in our faces all throughout 2020 and telling anybody who stood up to, people who were breaking into gated communities and breaking windows and burning property and destroying property, but then saying, well, if you stand up for yourself, if you defend yourself, or if you defend your property, you're the bad guy. Well, of course it started creating these incredibly hostile, intense feelings. And now they're doing the exact same thing by pushing all of this pride stuff and all of this LGBT stuff on, what I think people feel the most protective of is children, little kids, especially their own children. So then, now they're telling people, well, you're a bigot. We always knew you were anti-gay. We always knew the right was anti-gay, and now you're just proving that to us. No, we're not anti-gay. We're not anti-lesbian. We're not anti-LGBT. What we are is protective of the innocence of little kids, and that this has no place in school curriculums or in the department store, toddler departments of stores and things like this. It's not appropriate. And the same thing we saw recently at the Dodgers game with the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. I think you're not, it doesn't make you anti-gay or homophobic if you object to men who are dressed like nuns with satanic makeup on, receiving some sort of lifetime achievement award. It's absurd. And I don't know if you saw the story today that CNN was posting that the Human Rights Campaign, which is a pro-LGBT equality organization, extremely far left, extremely, fringe leftist organization at this point, declared a national state of emergency for the LGBT community. Literally said this is one of the...
I was just thinking, I was like, what's the state of emergency? I would understand. When I was a kid, I remember
running out of
in
money.
The village... Yeah. Well, the issue back there was gay bashing, right? In the village back in the 1980s, it was dangerous. People were getting assaulted. But today, Target is literally rolling out the red carpet, and pride is everywhere you go. What kind of state of emergency could there really be, Brandon Straka?
The state of emergency is that they're running out of money. These organizations like the Human Rights Campaign, like the NAACP, like GLAAD, these are all businesses that it's the oppression industry. They're all arms of the oppression industry. This is big money. These people like Al Sharpton and all of these race hustlers and all of these equality hustlers, these people are making $600,000-$700,000 a year in these executive positions in organizations like the Human Rights Campaign. And there's many of them. It's like the top 30, top 40 executives are all making over $200,000-$300,000 a year, some of them making millions of dollars a year. They're out of a job if they can't continue to convince people that human rights are in danger, that minority rights are in danger. So they have to make this stuff up. Here's the thing. We live in an age where people read headlines and become incensed and go crazy and start sharing and reacting. Most people don't read the article anymore. And if you read the article, what you'll find, as I did, believe me, it made me sick to my stomach, but I read the CNN article. And what I found is what they're talking about is the state of emergency is that there is more, according to them, more anti-LGBTQI laws and initiatives being put forward than ever before. Well, what are these anti-LGBTQIA laws? Well, there are things like pronoun laws, that there are certain, states and areas that are trying to enact laws that say that we don't have to use pronouns that are outside of the gender binary, or drag queen show restrictions for children. This is now what is being called a state of emergency. Oh my God, we might not be able to do a drag performance for a 7-year-old. This is a state of emergency. Oh my God, it might not be illegal to someone may not be able to sue you if you don't refer to them by they, them pronouns or these are pronouns. This is a state of emergency. This is nonsense. I mean, it's
Brandon
insanity.
Straka, I just want to add, I think most egregiously, what sparked some of this is that there are states saying if you're a minor, a legal minor, you can't get surgery to change your genitalia or your sex or however the gender affirming care, as they call it. You can't get that without parental consent. And there are people advocating for children to get that without letting their parents know. And I think this is a huge deal and has nothing to do with anybody's sexuality. It has everything to do with just the law of parents and minors, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the point here is, I mean, there was a time when we talked about, a state of emergency, which, by the way, I don't think they've ever declared. I think the Human Rights Campaign even acknowledged that in 40 years they've never declared a state of emergency. But my God, they didn't even declare a state of emergency during the AIDS crisis, or at the periods in our history where, gay people really weren't even safe to be able to walk in certain neighborhoods without fear of being gay bashed or beaten. But now suddenly it's a state of emergency. If we can't mutilate a child's body, or if we can't perform a raunchy drag show in front of elementary school children. I mean, this is where these people are.
It's a sick place to be. Folks, we're on with Brandon Straka, and if you missed it earlier, he was referring to himself as gay, and he wants to remain gay. He thinks these practices are predatory. He's the founder of the Walkaway campaign and walked away from the Democrat Party and what he called lies from the media. It's an amazing story. Check out their website as well. We're coming back with him. We're going to wrap up in a moment. But if you have a question or a comment, feel free to give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Target again. Their market cap is down over $13 billion amidst the Pride backlash. And to their rescue come 200 LGBTQ groups that are demanding that Target restock their Pride merchandise and release a statement now saying there's no such thing as neutrality, meaning you're either with us or you're not. Of course, there was a state of emergency issued by the Human Rights Campaign. That happened earlier today. Here's a quote on that. LGBTQ plus Americans are living in a state of emergency. The multiplying threats facing millions in our community are not just perceived. They are real, tangible, and dangerous. And that's according to the group's president, Kelly Robinson, in the statement that was released today. Our guest is Brandon Straka, Straka, like Straka, silent A, Brandon Straka, who is the founder of the Walkaway campaign. And he's fired up. He's telling us about everything that's going on. Brandon Straka, tell us what's going on with the event, the LGBTQ town hall that you're going to be conducting in New York City.
Yes, and thank you. And by the way, I'm Googling that woman's salary right now as we're speaking. Kelly Robinson, how much money do you make? I'm looking. Yes. So the Walkaway campaign, we're pretty known for doing minority-focused events, and we're coming back to New York City for our, I think it's our fourth or our fifth minority town hall. This one's going to be for the LGBT community. We're actually doing it Pride Month, Pride weekend. So this is June 24th, Saturday. Here's the thing, and somebody, while we were on this commercial break, I was reading some of my social media messages, and somebody said to me, I so want to come to your LGBT town hall, and I want to bring my boyfriend, but we're a straight couple. Can we come? Yes, absolutely. So listen, anybody, if you're in the New York City area, because listen, we have to do this. We have to work as a team. This is a community effort. It's going to require LGBT people. It's going to require straight people. We have to come together because the truth is we're not fighting the LGBT. We're fighting this Marxist agenda that I think has really hijacked these minority communities. And so in my mind, the best way to fight back is to get people who are members of this community, get some LGBT people together on a panel, people who have walked away from the Democratic Party, who have walked away from the lies of the leftist media, and who have walked away from this Marxist agenda to talk to our own community and say, it is time to stand up for America and stand up for American values and the American family. And we have to come together as a community to do that. And that's something for straight people and LGBT people to come together. And so I really, really, really want to encourage anybody out there, if you're anywhere in the New York City area, please come attend our event. You can find out, you can go to walkawaycampaign.com/events, click on events, and you can get tickets or you can make a contribution if you can't make it. Please, any donations that help us do these events, we can do more of this around the country and get this word out. But more than anything, we want people in New York to come out and support. So again, that's walkawaycampaign.com/events.
Yeah. I want you to also let everybody know that this is not an LGBTQ organization per se, that there's a lot of work that you're doing. You did a lot of work around January 6th, of course, as you were wrongfully incarcerated. And there's a number of things you do: outreach in Hispanic community, outreach in the African American community. Tell everybody, give them, I guess, the best understanding of, I think it's always good to retell your story. While many have heard you on the program before, I think some people might be hearing you for the first time and may not know why you walked away, what walk away is, and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So, yeah, it's not an LGBT organization at all, although that's one of the communities that we do outreach for. I walked away from the Democratic Party in 2017, somewhere shortly after Trump took office. I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. I was devastated when Donald Trump won the election. And what it did was set me on a journey to try to understand two things. Why would anyone vote for a man who was as awful as the media told me that Donald Trump was? And also, how did the media that I trusted get the election so wrong? Because they guaranteed me that Hillary Clinton was going to win. And I went on a months and months long journey of research that ultimately showed me that it was not Donald Trump that was my problem. It was the media that I was trusting that was my problem. I was being lied to and deceived and manipulated. And I mentioned earlier in this interview that I'm a gay man. Well, I started to see too, they're lying to all of us. But if you're a minority, if you're black or brown or LGBT, they're lying to us, I think, even more egregiously and more in a more targeted way, and really controlling us as groups to control the way that we feel and the way we think and the way that we vote. And that's the reason why when I walked away and I created this organization, Walk Away, I wanted to put a special focus on minority communities. Number one, because I think they're being manipulated and targeted heavier by the Democrats.
Brandon, I don't want to jump in, but I want you to give them the website once or twice because we're about to run out of time in the segment.
Well, you're the one who asked me to tell the story. I knew I couldn't.
No, I just give them the website. We'll come back and we'll finish it up.
You got it. walkawaycampaign.com/events for our this event coming up. And we also have our own social platform now, Walkaway Social, and that's walkawaysocial.com if people want to join the movement and share their stories.
All right, we're going to put a finer point on it straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, welcome back. We were on with Brandon Straka, and the radio clock is always so rude to cut people off. Brandon Straka, go ahead and finish your thought and let everybody know how they can follow your work.
Yeah, absolutely. So if they want to be a part of the testimonial campaign and the walkaway community, and that's even for people who just are supporting those who walk away, they need to join our new social platform. It's called Walkaway Social. It's available in the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store, or you can access it on the web at walkawaysocial.com, which will also redirect you to the apps. So I'd encourage everyone to get on Walkaway Social. And for anyone in New York who wants to come out and support our event, please go to walkawaycampaign.com/events. It's on June 24th at 3 o'clock p.m. New York City. I'd love to see everyone in New York there. And if you can't come, please make a contribution to help support financially for that event. And that's walkawaycampaign.com/events.
Outstanding. Brandon Straka, thanks for being here with us. Keep up the good work. Godspeed to you, my friend.
Thanks, Rich. Great talking with you.
You bet. All right, folks, there's more to come straight ahead. Your calls and more. We're going to continue our discussion on where's the beef? What's going on with the cost of a steak lately? We got the founder of Chili's restaurateur, Larry Lavine, up next.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo, and our telephone number. If you want to join our late-night national town hall forum, we're live, and your calls are welcomed. 833-482-5337, 8334-VALDEZ. Now, a couple of quick things in the news. Listen to this. So, a federal appeals court has upheld a block of the Biden administration's migrant release policy, known as the catch and release policy, where they're just allowing migrants to be released into their own recognizance as long as they register for a court date in an app called CBP1. Well, an appeals court had said, no, you can't do that. You've actually got to do the work. And they relitigated that and again upheld that same block today. In other news, on the Biden front, Hunter Biden was ordered to appear in court in July and has been warned that he faces jail time for allegedly concealing his finances in a current child support case. So that's what's going on there. Then listen to this. The government in Ireland has put forth a proposal to slaughter 200,000 cows to meet European Union climate change goals. That, of course, sparked some outrage from PETA, the animal rights group, calling the climate change plan that kills 200,000 cows ridiculous, saying that government kill squads won't help climate change. And that brings me to the question, right? And the question is, why is steak getting pricier? Well, hamburgers, steaks, and pretty much any other beef product is already near record level prices, and they're set to get more expensive. The culprit, well, it's a rapidly shrinking supply of cattle, years of droughts, and the pandemic disruptions, not to mention some taxes that were added on to cattle farmers. And voila, here we have a problem, bringing the number of cattle in the U.S. to its lowest level in nearly a decade. Listen to this. U.S. beef production is on track to drop by more than 2 billion pounds in 2024. That's the largest annual decline since 1979. That's 44 years. And that's according to the Department of Agriculture. So the question becomes, where's the beef? Now, you remember, where's the beef? There was that funny commercial from Wendy's back in the day.
Hey, where's the beef?
And, of course, this one is a classic where there's a song about baby back ribs.
I want my baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back ribs, baby back ribs.
And, of course, that was from the Chili's commercial where they want their baby back ribs. And speaking of Chili's, we've got the founder of Chili's with us. He's our guest this evening. Larry Lavine. He's a legendary restaurateur. He's the founder of Chili's, and he's launched a couple of other restaurant concepts, over the course of his career. His latest concept is Loop 9 BBQ. Larry Lavine, welcome to the program.
Good evening. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. So let's talk about the price of beef. What is going on?
Well, I think you summed it up with the shrinking herds of beef. I know more about the buy side than the supply side, but my beef suppliers tell me, the drought is just, they can't make money because they can't pay for the feed. So I think that's where it starts, that everything's up for everybody, but the fuel's up and the fertilizer's up. But the drought, I think, is the big culprit here.
Yeah, no question. You can't raise cattle if you can't feed the cattle. That's for sure.
Right.
Now, you being, well versed in business and well versed in restaurants, in particular in businesses that sell beef, like Chili's and this new Loop 9 barbecue. Tell us how you see this going for your colleagues in the food service business. Is this going to wipe out people that are making their living this way? Do you think this is just a bubble that's got to pass? What say you?
I don't think it's a bubble. I think, if I used to sell hamburgers for $8 and now I have to sell them for $12, I don't think I'm going back to $8. I don't see everybody moving backwards. Hopefully it's going to slow down. I think everybody's just going to have to adjust to higher prices. What we don't know is if I went out to dinner and ate a hamburger every 3 weeks with the price up, 30 or 40%, do I now wait 6 weeks before I have more? So we'll just have to wait and see on that if the consumer is going to slow down a little bit. And there are some indicators that is going to happen.
Yeah, well, it's a scary time of life. I remember a couple of years ago, there were some folks out there that were sounding the alarm saying, look, this year for July 4th, you're not going to have any beef. There's going to be no hamburgers, maybe just hot dogs, maybe just chicken, but you're definitely not going to have any hamburgers because even a few years ago, this had begun. There were weather conditions and I guess a little bit of a slowdown in beef, but it seems to have continued. And if this isn't a bubble and it's not going to pass, and you're saying it's a fixture of just adjusting your costs and figuring out how to do it, does this, in your opinion, keep smaller mom and pop operators that maybe wanted to open a burger spot or something like that, something small to make a living for them and their families? Does this prevent them from getting into the marketplace, or is it just one additional barrier that they eventually will overcome? What do you think?
Oh, I think, those entrepreneurs like you described, I think they can still get in. They're just going to have to raise prices like everybody else. They can't, even if you're small, you still have to pay the inflated prices to be competitive. You're going to have to price the product higher. But I think there's always room for another great concept.
All right, Larry Lavine, I want you to stick around with us. I'd like to pick your brain a little bit on how you got into the restaurant business and why you stuck around. I know a lot of people say it's a great business, but it's a tough one and it has some of the highest turnover we've ever seen. So maybe you can give us a couple of tips on everybody who wants to get into the game. Folks, we're on with Larry Lavine. His projects, previous concepts like Chili's, and he's got a new one called Loop 9 BBQ. We're going to learn about that as well straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. Give us a call, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to it.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Our guest is Larry Lavine. He's a legendary restaurateur. He's the founder of Chili's. And Larry Lavine, I'd love to get your take on what's your story like? Did you always know you wanted to get into the restaurant business, or was it something that just happened by happenstance?
No, I a childhood friend, one of my best friends, and I talked about doing a little burger concept for years, and just simple menu of burgers and fries. At the time, there weren't casual restaurants like there are now. There was diners and white tablecloths. There wasn't much in the middle, and we were kind of early on the curve for that. So our goal was to build a little neighborhood restaurant just serving a very simple menu of hamburgers and fries. And our challenge was we thought we could sell hamburgers at lunch pretty easy, but we needed to make sure that we built the atmosphere where people would frequent it at night and build an experience where they'd have a good visit at night. And so it was important to us to have the right lighting and sound and seating, and fortunately it caught on.
How did you come up with that formula? Would you sit there and figure out, I want a bar vibe, a kind of a home cooked vibe? How did you determine that look and that feel to create that experience?
Well, we had a bar, but it was not a bar. We were really just a sandwich place. That was our goal, was to serve a great half-pound burger. There wasn't a burger shop like there is on every corner in Dallas now, but it was really just to have really great food, whether it was a hamburger or french fries. Everything was made from scratch, and we were really proud of the food we served. It was simple, but it was high quality, and that fortunately that caught on.
And you said it was you and your buddy. How old were you guys when that happened? Was this something from your youth, something from your young adulthood, teenage years?
Yeah, we were in our 30s. We were in our 30s, and we had talked about it for a long time until the location came up that fit. It was, everybody told us it was a little too far north of town, but fortunately they were wrong, and it turned out to be a great location.
And folks, we're on with Larry Lavine. He's the founder of Chili's. He's also got a new concept called Loop 9 BBQ. Tell us about the new concept and how it's different from what we already know in Chili's.
Well, this is a barbecue house. I've done another. This is the second barbecue restaurant I've done. It's at a new project called the Epic in Grand Prairie, a suburb of Dallas. And it's all premium barbecue. In Texas, you judge a barbecue place by how their brisket is. So we really work hard to turn out a great brisket and all the sausage and ribs and turkey and everything that goes with it. But people in Texas, they like barbecue, and we try to give them the best product we can.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I'm ready to check it out. Now, tell me how, I guess, what's one of the top lessons you've learned being in the restaurant business? Because I know so many people get into the restaurant business, and they usually say, see if they're around in 5 years, because that's that magic number where most people end up failing in the restaurant business. What's your secret to success?
Well, I think you first have to have a valid concept. Chili's, of course, after 40-something years has proven that it's valid. So you have a valid concept that it's not a fad. And then the next and most important thing is the team that you've got to run the restaurants. And I was really fortunate for the first 8 or 10 or 12 people that I hired, executives. They did a great job, and we had a great family experience, and everybody was passionate about turning out a quality product. And our one goal was just to build more restaurants. So I was really fortunate with that, and I've learned that the bad management can run a great restaurant in the ground in 30 days. So you really need to have great managers, and you have to treat the staff right. I'm a big believer in having a great company culture. We had a great culture at Chili's, which they still do today, and you have to work every day to show your employees that you care about them and respect them and listen to them and give them an opportunity for growth. And it's more important today than it ever has been to have a great company culture.
Now, Larry Lavine, I think I've heard from other restaurant operators and food service professionals that, you can have a great chef, a great cook, a great back of house, but you need an equally good front of house in order to operate, to be a good operator. And it seems like you're saying the same thing. How do you tie that in, both having a good front of house, good back of house, and how do you tie that into creating this corporate culture you're talking about in the company?
Well, from one side, the manager is what controls everything. They're what we call a general manager for the restaurant. He's the one that screens all the employees, takes care of the training plan, helps build the culture every day. And so it for a restaurant to be successful, the general manager is the one leading the charge, and he has to do a great job if you're going to have a successful restaurant. We encourage the managers to work every day to build a great company culture, because that really makes a difference. If in today's every retail store, from a cleaner to a restaurant, got a sign out that says they're looking for help, and if you don't treat your help right and show them how much you love them and respect them and communicate with them, then they'll go across the street and get a job in another 5 minutes. So we work very hard at trying to build a great company culture and work at it every day.
Now, Larry Lavine, in the last couple of years, we've seen a huge slowdown in 2020 because of COVID-19, which lasted, I would say, about 2 years. Are you seeing an uptick in business now, like you're getting back to pre-pandemic levels, or do you feel you're still trying to get there?
No, in Dallas, we're above it. I mean, where some restaurants didn't make it, so there's fewer restaurants. And I think there's still some hangover pent-up demand that I couldn't go out for a year or two, and now I'm going to make up for it. So the casual and fast casual restaurants in Dallas are doing more business than they ever have. There was an article in the paper a couple of months ago that there's scalpers that sell restaurant reservations in Dallas. If you can't get into the restaurant, you buy a scalper's reservation. So, no, the restaurant,
wow.
the scene in Dallas it's better than it has been for years.
Now, with respect to the barbecue place, you mentioned earlier it's about creating a good brisket, and of course
right.
that sounds really good. But is there more to it? Is it different drastically than the burger concept, or is it just different types of food, but ultimately the same type of business plan?
Well, basically the same business plan. The difference with barbecue is most of it's all cooked ahead. It takes 12 or 14 hours to cook a brisket. So you have to anticipate what's going to happen tomorrow and make that prediction today, as opposed to a hamburger restaurant. If it's slow and raining outside, you know that you're going to be slower. But with a barbecue business, you have to predict what you think the day's going to be the next day. And we try to buy a premium product and treat it right and cook it on an old wood fire and take all the steps necessary to really turn out a great product. But the barbecue business is not hard once you learn how to do it, but you have to follow some steps and be very faithful to treating the product with respect so you can turn out a great product.
Now, Larry Lavine, founder of Chili's, with a few moments that we have left, I'd like you to share with the audience what's the best piece of advice or top 2 tips, if you will, for somebody that's looking to get into the restaurant business. Give us the golden rule.
No, what I said before, you got to have a valid concept. Now, you never know what's going to work. The Nashville chicken that's white hot all over the country now, there's opportunity for that. So you have to find out what niche you're going to be in and turn out a quality product, have a great team, and you have to be very consistent. The public doesn't average good and bad on restaurant experience. They expect the same thing every time. So, and that's one of the reasons Chili's works is you can go in a Chili's in Dallas or Houston or Paris, and you're going to get the same product every time. So you've got to set up the systems and procedures and the team as they're going to turn out a consistent product every time.
Consistency. I hear that. Larry Lavine, legendary restaurateur, founder of Chili's, and also his latest concept, Loop 9 BBQ. Sir, I want to thank you for joining us and making us all very, very hungry and for sharing your wisdom with us.
I enjoyed it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. You bet. Godspeed to you, sir. Happy early Father's Day. All right. We're going to continue straight ahead with your calls and more. Plus, we're going to reflect on D-Day. Of course, it is D-Day. Military historian for Hillsdale College, Mark Moyar. He's coming up next, so don't go anywhere. Keep it locked right here. 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number, 833-482-5337. Or, of course, you can check us out at richvaldezamericaatnight.com. Don't go anywhere, and don't move a muscle.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And, of course, today is the 79th anniversary, if I'm not mistaken, of D-Day. And we spoke about that a little bit earlier in playing the comments from President Ronald Reagan. But it was that valiant day, right, where The American soldiers famously stormed the beaches of Normandy, France in World War II. And, of course, we salute them. And as we look back at that, we have to, I guess, pause, right, and really reflect on that. And I felt who better than Hillsdale College's military historian Mark Moyar to join us and discuss D-Day and some of the other trending topics that I'd like him to discuss. Mark Moyar, welcome.
Hey, great to be with you.
Yes, sir. So let's, I know you've written the book on Vietnam, Triumph Regained, the Vietnam War, 1965 to 1968, and we discussed that previously on this program. But I'd like for you to discuss with us your reflections on D-Day, as only a military historian could.
Yeah, so it is one of the, if not the greatest days in U.S. military history, and it's a reminder of why we need to remember our past and especially our military history, which in much of the country is fallen out of fashion, which is a great shame. But to put it in historical context, the United States came out of a period of isolation, the time of Pearl Harbor, and initially there was a lot of emphasis on the Pacific theater, and the British were trying to encourage the United States to avoid taking Hitler on directly. They wanted to go to North Africa and Italy and to limit their casualties. But eventually Franklin Roosevelt figured out that we couldn't just keep beating around the periphery, and that the Soviets were pushing from the other side. So the United States comes up and mobilizes this incredible amount of resources to take on occupied France, and does it really in a brilliant way.
Now, I feel like all too often D-Day goes overlooked, and we forget about what really happened or how it happened. And for me, this came alive. I once spoke with the son of someone that was there and made it back home, and shared a little bit with his son, and it impressed upon his son, and he shared those stories with me, and it made for riveting conversation. And I'm wondering, from your knowledge of the topic, what was that day like for those that were on the front lines on Omaha Beach? Many of which felt, I guess, were marching towards their almost certain death.
Yeah, so there were 5 beaches that were scheduled, and the perhaps greatest strategic stroke for the United States was that they convinced the Germans they were going to land someplace else in Cas de Palais, which was to the east, and so that drew a lot of the German forces away. But there were very strong German forces at Omaha Beach, and I think probably the best way to think of what happened is to just watch the opening scene in Saving Private Ryan. I think that kind of says it better than anything, that as soon as the landing craft hit the beach, they're getting hit by German machine gun fire and artillery, and very, very heavy casualties suffered. And it goes so bad initially that General Omar Bradley thinks about actually calling off the mission, but eventually they're able to get enough men ashore to fight the Germans, and some of them scale, the American Rangers scale the cliffs at Pointe du Hoc and overwhelm the German defenders there. And but certainly this is not a foregone conclusion that this was all going to go well, and had things gone slower at Omaha Beach, the U.S. whole invasion would have been in big trouble, because things ultimately, once they get ashore, don't go as rapidly as hoped.
All right, folks, let me remind you that we're on with Mark Moyar. He's a military historian at Hillsdale College, discussing his reflections on D-Day. We're going to continue with him straight ahead, plus your calls, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. It is Rich Valdez. Thank you for being with us this evening. And our guest is Mark Moyar. He's the author of Triumph Regained. You can check him out at markmoyar.com. And he's the military historian at Hillsdale College. We have a caller from St. Cloud, Minnesota, KNST. Rick, welcome. You're on with Mark Moyar and Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I read once that Eisenhower had prepared a statement in case the landing failed, and I'm wondering if that's true and if there were actual plans in case it really went bad.
Okay, Rick, thank you. Mark Moyar?
Yes, that is correct that that he did produce such a letter, and because we tend to kind of, from hindsight, just assume that everybody knew this was going to succeed, but highlights the fact that this was in fact a very risky and dangerous undertaking, and even though they get the troops ashore, they still need to. Most of the invasion force doesn't get in on D-Day, so they've got to hold land and hold the Germans back. And the Germans do amass forces. They're able to destroy the nearest port. And, fortunately, American air power slows down the German advance. And they also keep the Germans from moving all their troops from the diversionary site. And then, we see something similar during the Battle of the Bulge, where initially the Germans are so successful that Eisenhower contemplates and makes preparations for pulling back and retreating. But again, in that case, eventually the Americans are able to prevail and move forward.
All right. Thank you, Mark Moyar. Rick, thank you for your call. And I feel ultimately that with D-Day in hindsight, I feel like there isn't very much emphasis or not enough emphasis on these remembrances. Am I alone in that feeling, Mark Moyar, or do you agree?
I agree. I mean, I think, and again, if somebody's spent time studying Vietnam, during the Vietnam War, we saw for the first time this loss of interest and in some cases, active contempt for American veterans, and I don't think we've ever fully recovered from that. Now, we in recent times have Americans have been more respectful of veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan, but those two conflicts also very controversial, and you don't hear many people talking at all about honoring those veterans these days, and there is a general in significant parts of the country, especially the urban areas, there's this general loss of interest in the military, and I think people kind of take it for granted and don't really understand the importance of our military.
Yeah, well said. Folks, we're on with Mark Moyar, and we've got a call from Pharrell. He's calling from New Kensington, Pennsylvania on KDKA. Pharrell, welcome. You're on with Mark Moyar and Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
No, that's Daryl, actually. I'd like to comment on, I'm 62, and when I was a kid, these World War II veterans used to come in our family business, and they were just like regular guys, smaller guys, because back then there was everybody was like 5'8" or 5'9", and they were just, real, humble, not, nothing, and they're still around. And I'm 62, and they're still here, and that's amazing. That I still get to see them. And I also wanted to comment on how the French really helped during D-Day too. Blew up railroads or anything they could do to disorient the Germans, and really helped too. And I want to make sure that we don't forget about them, because a lot of them died doing that.
Thank you, Daryl. I appreciate it. Mark Moyar?
Yeah, so there was certainly this division among the French between there was an active resistance movement. A lot of them had been rounded up by the Germans ahead of time, but they did become more active as the offensive moves along, and it is indeed great that there still are few veterans out there. Unfortunately, the passage of time, most of them, most of those who were at Normandy no longer with us, but I think it's as important as ever that we commemorate them on this day.
Yep, well put, folks. Our guest is Hillsdale College's military historian, Mark Moyar. He's the author of Triumph Regained, and you can check him out at markmoyar.com. We're going to continue with him and your calls straight ahead. I also want to get his reaction to some of the breaking news in the last several hours about the dam in Ukraine, the Kakhovka, which has now been damaged, and there's flooding that's been sparked all over the place. So we're going to discuss that a little bit when we come back. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
We've seen the reports that Russia was responsible for the explosion at the dam, which I would remind Russian forces took over illegally last year and have been occupying since then. We're doing the best we can to assess those reports, and we are working with the Ukrainians to gather more information. But we cannot say conclusively what happened at this point.
All right, that's John Kirby giving a statement today with respect to the bombing of a dam, the Kakhovka Dam, which was destroyed in an attack. They believe Russia has done this in an attack on Ukraine. Folks, our guest is Hillsdale College military historian Mark Moyar, and he's the author of Triumph Regained. You can check him out at markmoyar.com. Mark Moyar, we've often heard that those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. And I remember during I guess it was the Obama administration, we saw Russia making advances to reclaim what was once part of the Russian Empire, in effect, Crimea, and now with them making more and more moves to try and reclaim other parts of Ukraine. What's your reaction to this dam being destroyed and flooding, which is now ensuing?
Well, I think it's still a bit hard to know for sure who is doing this. Both the Russians and the Ukrainians came out and blamed each other, and this country and certainly the Biden administration tends to believe believe Ukraine and not believe Russia. But we did have the Nord Stream pipeline attacks, which is a similar deal, which they still don't know who did it, but there is now a lot of evidence suggesting that in fact it was the Ukrainians. So it's hard to know, and just from news reporting, it seems like both Russia and Ukraine are going to suffer some ill effects from this dam breaking. Apparently some Russian troops were killed, although I think economically it seems that it would be more harmful to Ukraine. But it's another, I think, sad indicator of the depths that this war is going to, and as it goes on longer, you see both sides resorting to more and more brutal and nasty means. And, I think, Putin not only quite rises to the level of Adolf Hitler. He's not going out and attacking everybody, but he has shown himself to do certain things and shown a certain level of ruthlessness that we haven't seen. That we didn't see a whole lot of this things of this nature from the Germans, except when they were going in Eastern Europe. But on the Western Front, we didn't see this sort of thing.
All right. Mark Moyar, I want you to let everybody that's listening know how they can keep up to speed with the work that you're doing and learn more about that work.
Yes, I've got a website. It's at markmoyar, MOYAR.com. I've got postings from books there. Yeah, the latest one, as you mentioned, is my second volume of Vietnam War history, Triumph Regained.
And if people want to get a copy of the book, do they get it at the website, or is there a separate address for that?
There's a link. They also go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble and or wherever else they get their books.
Outstanding. Well, folks, give him a follow at Mark Moyar on social media. Mark Moyar, I want to thank you for being with us. It was insightful conversation. I appreciate your historical analysis, and I hope you'll come back again soon.
Great. Thanks for having me on, Rich.
You bet. Anytime. All right, folks, we continue with our discussions on D-Day and everything else that we've discussed tonight and in Open Phones, Open Phone America tonight. I want to hear if you have a family member that served and was there on D-Day, or, has that close, intimate family story, somebody you knew, a neighbor you once met. I want to hear from you. Give us a call, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. Let's go to Alice in Atlanta, Georgia on WGKA. Go right ahead.
Well, hey, Rich. My father was in the Signal Corps, but he was not in the D-Day invasion. However, I did have a friend that was a paratrooper that jumped into France, and he managed to live through World War II. And every year afterward, when they would celebrate, like they did yesterday, he'd go over to France, and all these guys would jump out of airplanes. Even when he was like 75 years old, he was jumping out of an airplane.
Wow.
So it never leaves, I suppose, that feeling of camaraderie and bravery and exhilaration at having won the war. But I wanted to ask Mark, but I can get in contact with him through Hillsdale, what he knows about the Signal Corps and how, because that was a new branch of the service. My father was stationed in France and was part of the communication from Eisenhower to the White House. But my father would never talk about it. I mean, he never talked about it. And so I don't have much information about what he did. He did write up a lot of it toward the end of his life. I haven't read it all, but I thought I would send that to Mark to maybe fill in maybe some gaps that he might have as far as what my father's unit did. It was very small. It was only about a 5 or 6 man unit, and they landed in France in December, when it's bitterly cold.
Oh, wow.
And he said that the first few nights they were there, they were sleeping in an open barn with no roof.
Wow. Well, I recommend checking them out at markmoyar.com. Alice, thank you for the call on WGKA. Godspeed to you. Thank you for your father's service. And I want to hear from the rest of you. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ. Open Phone America starts right now. Give us a call.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez with an S, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be with you on this D-Day as we remember the sacrifice of those very brave men, and welcoming your calls as well, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Make sure you get your calls in early for Open Phone America. Any topic that we've discussed, any topic you want to bring up, happy to discuss it with you, and we'll get to your calls momentarily. I want to first bring your attention to the 2024 field of candidates, because there's a lot of them out there. You've got Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson. You've got, let's see who I don't want to forget anybody. Senator Tim Scott. You've got, who else am I forgetting? Vivek Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley, former governor of South Carolina and former ambassador, of course, current governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, and former President Trump. And I feel like I'm forgetting one more, but there's some new ones that have been added to the mix. Larry Elder, how can I forget Larry Elder? An amazing broadcaster and a brilliant conservative mind. But there are some new ones, some new ex-politicos that are throwing their hats into the ring to continue their public service. Not the least of which is New Hampshire Governor Sununu. Now, days ago, he actually announced the opposite, that he's not getting involved in the presidential race. Listen to this.
So we've taken the last 6 months to really kind of look at things, where everything is, and I've made the decision not to run for president on the Republican ticket in 2024. And obviously, a lot goes into that decision, but it's been quite an adventure, but not the end of the adventure by any means.
Now, that wasn't all Governor Sununu had to say, because while he's out of the running for president, he's still quite involved in presidential politics. He was on MSNBC just yesterday saying that Donald Trump does not represent the Republican Party. Check this out.
It's not that we're there out there to beat Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't represent the Republican Party, right? He's the outsider, and we've kind of let him get away with kind of co-opting, I think, what are better traditional ideals of the Republican Party of limited government and local control. He wants to relitigate the past, and if we're going to be successful in the Republican Party, we got to move forward in the future. So I think Chris is a very good candidate. I think they're all really good candidates. They're all my friends. I think there's a lot to play out. We haven't even had a debate yet. So we're going to see who can take a punch, who can give a punch, who can really stand on that stage and make the case of America's future, not just worrying about litigating the past.
Now, of course, Governor Sununu is talking about former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie when he refers to Chris, because Governor Chris Christie has announced his run for president of the United States. Listen to this.
So I'll say to you tonight that I can't guarantee you success in what I'm about to do. But I guarantee you that at the end of it, you will have no doubt in your mind who I am and what I stand for and whether I deserve it. So that's why I came back to St. Anselm's, and that's why I came back to Manchester, and that's why I came back to New Hampshire to tell all of you that I intend to seek the Republican nomination for President of the United States in 2024, and I want your support.
Now, of course, he's not alone, and there's another such announcement coming from former Vice President Mike Pence, who has now filed his paperwork to launch his 2024 Republican presidential campaign. Former VP Mike Pence is running for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination, according to an FEC filing. Pence may face an uphill battle to win support of a party that's still largely loyal to former President Donald Trump, as they all are. And Pence's once close alliance with his former boss imploded after he refused to aid Trump's efforts to allow states to put forward electors that were chosen by state legislators. Now, I bring all of this up because I've politically speaking, I feel Trump is the guy to beat when you put on your pundit hat, right? You look at everybody that's announcing and putting themselves out there, and you've got to ask yourself, what's their angle, right? Some of them may be playing for keeps and they want to win. But for the most part, I feel like some people are saying, hey, you know what? I've got to figure out how I'm going to differentiate myself from Donald Trump and show people that have new or fresher ideas. And then you have others that are saying, now, my job here is just to soften him up, to just weaken him, to just pound away, and just chip away at Trump, since he is, in fact, the guy to beat. I don't know how that's going to play out. I can't imagine it's going to be rainbows and sunflowers and whatnot between Chris Christie and Donald Trump. Chris Christie being the former governor of New Jersey. I served in the Christie administration, was in the employ of the administration, just as an aside. And I think Governor Christie is an excellent debater. He actually was Trump's debate coach for some time during Trump's presidential debates. So Chris Christie's really good at litigating. He's a good lawyer. He was a good governor. First term, second term, I think he did a decent job. There's a couple of areas that were questionable. Of course, a lot of people will never let him live down his hug to Barack Obama after delivering Hurricane Sandy aid. But I do believe that Governor Chris Christie is not only saying it himself. There's a clip that we have. I'll just read you the transcript of it. But he says that, in essence, he's there, unlike other GOP candidates, he's there to point out Donald Trump's unsuitability, saying that Trump isn't electable. I think that's what this election will prove, given that everybody has a chance to bring their ideas to the table. But to just make these blanket statements, I don't think people that are astute political observers that are used to this type of thing are going to buy it. They're really going to have to make their case. At least those are my two thoughts. So you've got a couple of new people, Chris Christie, and hopefully maybe tomorrow or the next day we'll have some audio on Mike Pence actually making an announcement instead of just saying that he has FEC filings. So your calls and more coming up straight ahead. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Again, Open Phone America. We're about to start taking your calls. If you want to get in, feel free. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. And we're discussing 2024 politics. Of course, we talked about the restaurant business and specifically why meat is so expensive, in particular beef. And, of course, we talked about how Target has lost $13 billion in market value because of their insistence in promoting this LGBTQ clothing line that has raised a lot of eyebrows. So we'll get into all of that momentarily. If you missed any of our guests tonight, feel free to always listen in on our website. It's free. Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com. Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com. Let's start our journey across the country in Ohio. Let's check in with Paul, listening to Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com. Go right ahead, Paul. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Good evening, Rich. Yeah, the more I'm watching this presidential election coming up play out, I was always a Democrat, and then I kind of changed my mind a little bit back in 2017. I went a little more toward the Republicans because I liked what they had to say. But now that I'm watching the Republicans in actions, I think you guys don't have I think you're kind of weak. It's like you don't have a spine. With this debt deal.
Of course not.
Yeah. And I kind of question myself, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I was in the middle for a while. I was always told I was a Democrat. That's why I was a Democrat. But then I woke up and realized. But now that I'm seeing how the Republicans are acting, Trump is the best thing that's happened to this country in years. I don't care what anybody says. If we can't get him back in, I don't know what the consequences would be. I mean, I could run tomorrow. The only thing that I think that's happening here is maybe that some of these candidates that are running for president, they could throw in a little, what do you call it, Rich, when it gives Donald Trump more votes or it takes away from the Democratic vote.
Like a wedge.
That's where I would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would like to see somebody come into our country and into our politics that wants to do what's right for America, and Donald Trump has done that. Joe Biden surely hasn't. He said he was going to be the man to unify. Yeah, well, I haven't seen that, Rich. And
he also said he was going to cure cancer.
My comment tonight. Yeah, he sure did. And I just think that Donald Trump would be the best way to go. And I think that DeSantis should wait 4 more years. Let Donald Trump take the helm, and then I think he would be better qualified. Take care of Florida first, dude, and then, you could be the president for maybe the next 8 years if the Republicans stand up to the Democrats, because they're a tough lot, and they've always been that way. And that's my comment. Your response.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of things you said there. One, I think there's always been a battle within the Republican Party, and I think this is partially why Reagan got elected when he did when I was a little kid. I think this is why Trump got elected. I think there are, there's an ebb and flow of people that just like republicanism and the status quo establishment Republican. For lack of a better comparison, the Mitch McConnells of the world, right? Who's, according to many, a Republican only in name only, right? And these rhinos, if you will, there's a number of them. There's a lot of them that are very, very happy to just continue doing what they've always done. And I agree with some of them on some topics and disagree with them on others. And when put in a position where it's like, do I choose him or do I choose Bernie Sanders? Do I choose the establishment Republican or do I choose AOC? The choice is absolutely clear. You go with the Republican, even if it's a weak one, because a weak Republican's still better than a crazy lefty any day of the week, in my opinion. However, what I will say is that you have this conundrum here where people are like, well, I don't like the Democrats and the Republicans. They spend just as much. Well, they have to be held accountable too. And that's why I think people really like the Tea Party, and then I'm going to say the resurgence of the Tea Party, known as the MAGA movement, where people were saying, no, look, enough is enough. We want to do X, Y, and Z, and we're not gonna take it. And people became tough, politically speaking, and elected people that they wanted to see elected. And we saw those changes with the Tea Party. Now, where do we go from there? I don't know. Is the MAGA movement going to survive the test of time? I feel like it will. It has, and it will. I think we'll continue to go in the right direction. However, that doesn't mean that we don't have to clean house internally, right? We've got to make sure that we get rid of Mitch McConnell, whose best friend is, I'm going to say, Chuck Schumer. As long as we have that situation going on, we're in pretty bad shape. Just in my opinion, Paul.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell's one of the biggest rhinos in the party. I don't like him, and I like your impression of him, so I just want to tell you.
well, thank you, Paul. I'm a turtle. Turtle McConnell. Yeah, he's terrible, and I think we've got to do a better job at getting rid of guys like that. And again, easier said than done, right? Whatever I say on the radio is, it's for laughs and giggles, but it's not that easy to do in practice. These are very powerful politicians that it's going to require a really solid plan to take them out. Good news is they don't have age or gravity on their side. The only thing that the age brings is wisdom and how to, maneuver these political obstacles that they find themselves in. But they know how to get out of them by just keeping their mouths shut. Anyway, thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. And I just wanted to your point that Trump is a proven president. I have to say I agree with that point. I think that's a very solid point. I didn't want to scurry off and ignore the other point that you made. The fact that he has a track record, I think, is valuable. And I think that's what voters are going to have to decide and say, look, we have all these other great Republicans that are running. I may like some of what they say, but ultimately I think you can look at everything Trump has done and decide for yourself. And people that I think are being honest with themselves will see that growth, that how America was not the way it is today, how it was, just a few short years ago. So I think we're going to see some of that. I don't know how much of that we're going to see, but I think we're going to see some of that nonetheless, Paul.
Yeah, amen to that. Well, thank you, Rich.
You bet, my brother. Good to hear from you. Thanks for the call. Big shout out to everybody in Zanesville, Ohio. And thanks for tuning in tonight online. Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com. If you ever miss not an episode, but even just an interview, one of our conversations with one of our guests, you can always go to Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com. Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com is the website. You could sign up for our newsletter. You can also listen to any show that you'd like. There's a number of archive shows there. You could listen to the most current show, and you could sign up for the podcast, which I encourage you to do. Plus, this week we have a really good podcast that's coming your way where we're going to bring that to you on This Is America. It's my other podcast, and I strongly recommend you check that one out. It's 4 segments. It's very short, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. So head over to Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com. Now, let's see. Where do we go from here? Janie, Brownsville, Nebraska on KMA. Go right ahead.
Good evening, Rich. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise.
I'm calling in honor and respect of all the vets, especially my dad, who served in World War II, and he was stationed while he was in there at Lockheed and aircraft, he was on the assembly line building those little P-38s. They're not little, but they were mighty, feisty little fast fighters. But he was on the assembly line building those, and then, of course, they conquered the Japs down in Manila when he was stationed down there, and he was in the Wativo hardware building at upper level when a sniper almost took him out. But he had the GSR, the gunshot residue, on his left ear, and he wore that as his battle scar. But, yeah, he would have been 102.
Janie, hold that thought. The music means we got to go, but I want to come back and wrap this up with you to give your dad the honor he's due. So stick around with us, folks. We're coming right back. Your calls and more, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ. Give us a call. We're talking about D-Day and everything else. I'm Rich Valdez. It's America at Night, and we're coming right back.
This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
We stand on a lonely, windswept point on the northern shore of France. The air is soft, but 40 years ago at this moment, the air was dense with smoke and the cries of men, and the air was filled with the crack of rifle fire and the roar of cannon. At dawn on the morning of the 6th of June, 1944, 225 Rangers jumped off the British landing craft and ran to the bottom of these cliffs. Their mission was one of the most difficult and daring of the invasion: to climb these sheer and desolate cliffs and take out the enemy guns. The Allies had been told that some of the mightiest of these guns were here, and they would be trained on the beaches to stop the Allied advance. The Rangers looked up and saw the enemy soldiers at the edge of the cliffs shooting down at them with machine guns and throwing grenades. And the American Rangers began to climb. They shot rope ladders over the face of these cliffs and began to pull themselves up. When one Ranger fell, Another would take his place. When one rope was cut, a ranger would grab another and begin his climb again. They climbed, shot back, and held their footing. Soon, one by one, the rangers pulled themselves over the top, and in seizing the firm land at the top of these cliffs, they began to seize back the continent of Europe. 225 came here. After 2 days of fighting, only 90 could still bear arms. And behind me is a memorial that symbolizes the ranger daggers that were thrust into the top of these cliffs. And before me are the men who put them there. These are the boys of Puente Hope. These are the men who took the cliffs. These are the champions who helped free a continent. And these are the heroes who helped end a war. Gentlemen, I look at you and I think of the words of Stephen Spender's poem. You are men who in your, quote, lives fought for life and left the vivid air signed with your honor.
Of course, that is the late, great President Ronald Reagan on the 40th anniversary of D-Day on June 6, 1984. Of course, commemorating those that served and especially those that are no longer with us and gave the ultimate sacrifice on that D-Day. And every commemoration since, we honor them. I want to continue with our calls. I know that we were in the middle of a call with Janie. She's in Brownsville, Nebraska on KMA. She was discussing how her dad was caught by the bad guys and had some gunshot residue on his ear. Let's jump back into that story because I want to make sure your dad has the appropriate time to be honored. Janie, welcome back.
Yes, Rich. He wasn't captured. This was during World War II when half the troops were fighting the Nazis and half were fighting the Japanese. And he was in the South Seas of Manila when the Japs had desecrated Manila. And when the troops had moved in, there wasn't much of Manila left. But his troops were stationed in what was known as the Wativo hardware building, what was left of it upstairs. And a sniper down below, a Japanese sniper, when my dad was looking out over the range through the window, had taken a pot shot. And my dad by the grace of God, he had the GSR on his left ear, but if it had been a fraction of an inch in, he would have been gone. But this is what he was left with, a story for us kids, and he had such honor that we never knew much about the war till we got in our later teens. He didn't really want to talk much about it. And I guess a lot of the fellows were like that. And for the children of those war heroes, their dads really didn't talk to them much until later. But I have my dad's autobiography that he had given to my mom, and then he passed away in 2012. And so I'm just so proud of him and all of the veterans that served to keep this country free.
Well, outstanding. I salute your dad and his service. Obviously, I thank you for calling to commemorate his service. And, a lot of people who came in touch with World War II veterans all have many of them have similar reactions and responses that they've gotten from them, which is they would ask them, what was it like? How was it? And they just wouldn't answer. And they would just be very, very quiet about it because of, so many of the things they saw that perhaps weren't suitable for everybody to hear, or they might be distressed by this stuff. But what were some of your conversations like with your dad?
My dad, I was like you, Rich. I was kind of a barber, even though I was a girl. I used to cut my dad's hair for a quarter. And my sister
so he'd start talking.
What's that?
Usually the barber gets the scoop on everything because people love to talk when they're in the barber's chair.
Why the closeness with my dad. I was his youngest, and so my brother in between, us two ornery girls. But my dad was a very humble man, but a very devout Christian. And so I think this is why he didn't want to talk about it, because on both sides there's always casualties, but we had to fight to keep our country free. We couldn't just give it over to communism and the sadistic powers that wanted to take it. And so when my dad was, stationed at Lockheed, he was only 19 when he went in, and he had lost his mom on his 18th birthday. So it's quite a story that he went from losing his mom on his 18th to then going right into the war. But through God's graces, God kept my dad, or else I wouldn't be here telling the story. But I am just so proud of him with all the warriors of the war, all the veterans. I'm just so proud of our country and proud of the honors and the things that they sacrificed to keep us free and in this home of the free and the brave.
Outstanding. Couldn't have said it any better myself. Godspeed to you, Janie. Thank you for the call. And again, a big shout out to your dad and his memory and, of course, his service and everybody that served. Thank you, Janie, on KMA in Nebraska. Folks, there is more to come straight ahead. Give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. With an S.
All right, America, welcome back. We're going to continue with your calls. Our telephone number is 833-482-5337. And let's go to Ron in Council Bluffs, Iowa. Ron, go right ahead.
Yeah, Rich, this is my opinion. Like I say, I served 6 years in the Army. I hunted with my dad on the Missouri when I was about 10 years old. Like I said, I'm 86 now. And there are two things that if you could do, this is my opinion.
Sure.
Number one, a 10-day waiting period. You go in and you buy a gun, you got to wait 10 days before you can pick it up. That would give more and more time for everybody to make sure that this guy was all right. And the other thing, and this is paramount, eliminate all high-capacity magazines. Right now,
what's a high capacity in your opinion?
Yes, that's my opinion.
How many? How many is a high capacity?
Anything over 3 shells.
So if they have 6 in a magazine or a revolver, that's a 6-shooter, that's a high-capacity weapon.
All right, we'll make it 6 then. But I would not go more than that, Rick. That is ridiculous. And there's an argument for all the old duck and goose hunters, migratory waterfowl. You can only have 3 shells in your gun, and there's a federal game warden that stops by and checks your gun. You allowed 1 in the chamber, 2 in the magazine, and all the duck hunters are listening, and there's probably thousands of them. They all know this. You can only have 3 shells. In Australia, you know what they did? You want to buy a gun, fine, but there's a big waiting period, and you can only buy a single shot. You shoot once, you got to stop and reload.
Yeah, well, Ron, thank you for your service. I really appreciate that and respect it. I don't think I agree with your position on limiting guns, and I'll tell you why. Because in my world, and again, this is just limited to what's between my 2 ears, but I'm thinking there's only one reason that I have a right to keep and bear arms, and it's to protect myself from a tyrannical government, my government. And my government has lots of weapons and lots of bullets and lots of everything. Now, of course, I can defend my home and there's self-protection and all that stuff. And the chances of you getting robbed by somebody with a 6-shooter or an Australian 1-shooter, I'm going to say, are slim to none. but the chances of you getting robbed by somebody with a standard 9mm, 15 in the magazine, one in the chamber, that's pretty standard. And I just don't want to be outmatched by my assailant, whether it's an armed IRS agent, whether it's the government coming at me for whatever reason to do X, Y, and Z to me, or if it's somebody trying to rob me. The last thing I want to do is, pull out a slingshot or a pea shooter to somebody that's, got some serious firepower. Now, I understand the argument can be made that, look, your government, if you're afraid of your government, they could come at you with a bazooka and a tank and this and that. And I'm going to say, you're right. And I'm just going to do my best to protect myself as best I can without relinquishing any more of the current rights that I have to protect myself. I just can't give those rights up. So those are my thoughts. And I understand they come from a well-intentioned place. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to limit myself just because there are bad guys out there who don't follow the rules and go and do bad things with firearms. I think illegal possession of firearms and those that are stealing guns and whatnot, those people are going to continue doing what they do and doing bad things. And it's only us, the good intentioned people, the suckers that follow the law, that are going to be curtailed from doing anything by following any new such laws. So anyway, Ron, thank you very much. I did want to share a quick story with you guys. Of all places, CNN. Listen to this. Hundreds of white women gather at Colorado Capitol after a plea from women of color to use their privilege to demand action on gun violence. So hundreds of white women gathered in Colorado at the Capitol, and they did this because they want women, the white women, to use their quote-unquote privilege to help women of color. I mean, this is just fascinating. Fascinating, this concept. It's kind of like the idea that if we tell people not to buy guns and not to shoot people, that they will not buy guns and not shoot people. Of course, people that are following the law will likely not do that, and people that love to break the law will love to break the law. But that's what happened here. And the sit-in also came at a time where the national debate over gun control and is hot. And nearly 2 months after Jared Polis from Colorado signed into law 4 gun control bills, including one to expand the state's red flag law. Obviously, this has been adding insult to injury to people that have been following this issue. So that's the interesting spot we're at on that. We're going to continue with your calls and more straight ahead as we wrap up this D-Day edition of America at Night. Stand by. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez, and we're going to wrap up with your calls on this D-Day edition of America at Night. And I want to start with Mike in Grass Valley, California, KNCO. Mike, go right ahead.
Hi, how are you doing, Rich? First of all,
Wonderful.
This is in response to our Vietnam veteran, and I salute him for his service. To give you a little qualification, we've talked before, but I have 30 years law enforcement experience, and I'm a 9-year Ronald Reagan Marine. Okay? So, but I'm also a post-certified firearms instructor for California. And he doesn't understand. So, for instance, you get multiple assailants break into your house. Normally it's 2 or more on a home invasion. You have, if we go the way of Australia, we have a single-shot shotgun. Might as well just lay it down and give up because you have no way to defend yourself. And the Second Amendment wasn't written for hunting.
Right.
You know, it just wasn't. It was, and then we have the red flag laws. That's a serious slippery slope that empowers disgruntled neighbors, angry exes. It's just a bad idea. But our psychological professionals are not doing their job either by not bringing to the attention, say, our DOJ, when they have an individual who's seriously mentally unstable and a firearms owner. And they should report that. But because of HIPAA, they don't. So we're caught in a catch-22. You know, I mean, it's insane. I am very pro-gun. I teach women and children for free, et cetera, just to introduce them to it, to the basics. And then anybody else who wants to learn, I'll give them regular full-on classes.
And you got to take it from there, right? Because you got to start somewhere. And Mike, I want to thank you for your service and for your call. Big shout out to everybody in Grass Valley, California, KNCO. Got to move it along to Al. Al's calling from Kalispell, Montana, KOFI. Al, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, thanks for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. What's on your mind?
And, well, California had passed a 7-day waiting period to buy a gun. And when the LA riots broke out, thousands of people who would pass a background check went to their gun stores. And they told them, look, I can sell you the gun today, but you got to come back in a week. These people were terrified.
Right, and they had no way to protect themselves in the midst of the crazy that was going on. And I remember that was crazy. You had all these shop owners that were trying to guard their places. It was really out of control. Excellent point. I appreciate that. Al in Kalispell, Montana, KOFI. Big shout out to you guys. Let us go to Bill. Bill is in Tully, New York, WAUB, out of Syracuse. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, how's it going, man? I just want to give you a heads up. I really like what your show is all about, and I feel like our gun rights are non-negotiable. I can understand, background checks and the things that we're doing now, but it's the criminals. It's not. You literally put the guns in the hands of criminals that are stealing weapons and stuff, and the rest of us shouldn't have to abide by the stupidity. I'm a U.S. Army guy. My father is a Vietnam vet. My Uncle Dan's a Vietnam vet. And what I wanted
Thank you both for your service.
They didn't exactly get a warm welcoming on the ride home, and we have a memorial in our area that they're from that I can't seem to get their name on. And it's driving me nuts. How do I go about doing that? And
I don't know, but starting here on the radio is not a bad place. If anybody's in Syracuse, in that area, Tully, New York, listening, we definitely want to help them out. What are their names, Bill?
Dan Wood and William Switzer. That's my father is William Switzer, and my uncle's Dan Wood. He actually went and received a bunch of medals. He was a tunnel rat, from what I understand, and only after my father got him over to get some help at the VA, he actually opened up and told my father a bunch of things about his experience, which was a complete nightmare once I heard the stories. Yeah. And it's just nice to see that the RVA is taking care of them now. And
Amen.
And I love my Vietnam vets. I love all my vets.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. Godspeed to you. Thank you for your service. I hope you get your dad and your grandpa recognized on that memorial. Folks, it's been an honor and a pleasure to be here with you, acknowledging the 79th anniversary of D-Day. We're doing it again tomorrow. Take care, good night, and God bless. I am Rich Valdez. We'll do it again tomorrow.